In this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, I'm talking with Miranda Packer. Now, emotional fitness coach, behavior profilist, and multi-potentialist. If you don't know what that is, have a listen. But emotional fitness, I learned quite a lot in this podcast, not so much about empathy and how I relate to others, but how my emotional fitness relates to my relationship with uncertainty. So we unpack that and we go through what EDISC is. Most of you may know what DISC profiling is, but you may not have heard of EDISC and how that really applies to your own self-awareness, to that of your team, and also to that of your organizational structure. So stick around, really fun episode with Miranda Packer. Stay tuned. On this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, I'm talking to Miranda Packer. Now, Miranda is an emotional fitness coach, behavioral profiler, and the partner or spouse of a Navy guy. So really excited to chat to Miranda today. How are you, Miranda?
I'm awesome. Thanks, Pete. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited to chat with you.
Oh, that's great. It's cool. I'm actually interested to do some self-reflection today and understand a little bit about, emotional fitness and just seeing how, what boxes I put myself into and some of the tools that you use to do that. But let's kick off nice and simple. Whereabouts did you grow up in this great world of ours?
I grew up in Frankston in Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne, yeah.
Do you know Frankston?
I don't know it, but I used to play a basketball tragic, i.e. the Kobe Bryant stuff behind me and the San Antonio Spurs stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my mentors was a guy called Tony Gaze. That name is probably familiar to basketball people because his brother was Lindsay Gaze and whose uncle was, so that the whole Gaze family. And Tony was the Frankston basketball coach in about 1980. But that's all I know. That's it. Not much.
Oh, there you go. So Frankston has a reputation that precedes it. And so if you haven't heard of it, great. If you have heard of it, people kind of chuckle as soon as they hear of it because it has a bit of a reputation.
Is that like a bit of the burbs, sort of lower socioeconomic general? And I don't want to stereotype Frankston
Yeah,
people.
a little bit. It's an interesting place because there's also some very wealthy people there.
Yep.
But then you've also got very low socioeconomic areas. There's a particular area that you didn't walk around in, even in broad daylight in the middle of the day.
Gotcha. So how did you end up crossing paths into this military world? What's your connection there?
So my husband is in the Navy.
Yep.
He's an aviation warfare officer. He's been in approaching 20 years now. I think we actually met before he was in the Navy though.
How was that journey, or what was the decision-making process like for you both to join the military? Well, one goes, we both go.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting timing because when we got together, we were working together, but he had actually just started the process of joining. Mm-hmm. So he applied and was set to go to flight screening.
Yep.
So it went through flight screening, got in, and I think he went to flight screening probably about 6 months after we got together. So it was still fairly new. But I thought, okay, if this is going to go somewhere, I have to be prepared to make some sacrifices and, probably move my life around. I'm probably not going to be living in Melbourne anymore. And I need to be okay with that life.
Was he a Melbourne boy as well?
He was. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Now, ships go to sea. That's what they do. What about naval aviation? I guess you've got helicopters on ships, but did you get dragged around and do you have a lot of posting changes for your family over the 20 years?
Not a huge amount. So the first probably 7 or so years, we spent a lot of time apart. So before becoming parents, I stayed there. He moved around a bit. I was fortunate. I was traveling to Sydney quite a bit for work back then. So I would see him when he was up here, whether he was at Nowra, Tamworth or elsewhere, we would often get to see each other. And I didn't move up here until I was 35 weeks pregnant with our son.
Oh, wow. Gotcha. So because Nowra is the home of naval aviation, would that be right?
Yeah. So most, I don't know what percentage, but, at a guess, there must be about 90% of the aviators here. So we're quite fortunate that we actually don't move around a lot in the way that most other positions do.
Got it. And would he get posted? So they don't actually get posted to the ship, I guess. The helicopters are
They can
assets
do.
that, oh, they can do. There are some ships with helicopters on board.
So they, as an aviator, they can get posted to the ship. So, and it depends a
Gotcha.
little bit on what the ship's doing and what they're being posted to the ship for.
Yeah, there'd be flight line operations or helicopter operations, let alone the actual flying gigs
Yeah,
as
and they can
well.
be
So
posted to a ship in Sydney as well. So that's not that far for us. So that's, we actually have a friend right now who's posted to a ship in Sydney. And so he's living up there during the week, but he's back home on weekends.
got it. And back home is, without getting to specifics, in that sort of Shoalhaven, Nowra-ish kind of
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
2 hours south of Sydney, hour and a half,
Pretty
2 hours
much.
south of Sydney. Got it.
Yeah.
Now, what was your career at this time? Like less of him, more of you. Okay. So
Mhm.
what were you doing when you met up and how did you get into this pathway of the business?
Yeah. So when we met, we were working together at Optus.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so I worked there for 7 years and did a range of different roles in and around call centers,
Yep.
which was
Um, so were you guys both on the phone or managing them or?
Yeah, we were both, we were both in call centers when we met. I was leading a team in one of the call centers there, and he was working in one of the other centers. We ended up being put in the same center together and got together.
The rest is
But in
history. So
terms
they,
of
and the rest is history.
the rest is history. Yeah, in terms of the work that I was doing there, call center work is amazing. I think that everyone should work in call centers at some point in their lives, although with AI, the way it's going, call centers may not exist anymore. But the problem solving skills that you learn working in a call center set you up for life.
It seems to me to be a pretty brutal, data driven, performance based business and one where it's hard to make people happy.
Yeah, look, they are data driven, they are performance driven, they have to be. But I feel really fortunate that my call center experience was also very human, very nurturing, very caring. Optus was, and I don't know if it still is because I'm not
Yep.
there, but when I worked there, it was an incredible business to work for, extremely supportive. And I now work with leaders in my business, but my first experience as a leader was getting extremely good leadership development from working at Optus. I was part of the first cohort ever of their leadership development program. And what I learned in that program, the skills and confidence that it gave me, has set me up for so much success in my professional life.
Can you share a little bit more about that program? One of the reasons is there's quite a few very successful and influential people within the community that want to get into that space that are running, leadership businesses. What was it at Optus that really stood out, and what do you
Mhm.
think is a great leadership program consist of?
Yeah. So the thing that really stood out for me was the practical application. So it wasn't just theory. And in fact, I don't remember a lot of the theory side of it. What I remember is the practical application. So we were each tasked with finding and working on a project to implement the skills that we learned in the program. And for me, it was huge. Like I was really young when I did that program. I was probably about 25.
Yep.
And I worked with the financial services division to develop a call quality program for the financial services call centers because they didn't have one. I'd worked in call quality in another part of the business. And
Yep.
so my job was to partner with the leaders in financial services, develop a call quality program with them, test it, refine it, roll it out, train it to people. And the skills that I was able to implement and build on and make better from that leadership development program was just instrumental in my growth as a leader because of that practical application that I had.
Did it plant the seed for one day wanting to do this in your own business, or where did these pathways lead to you to understanding how to being the coach and obviously coaching and teaching other leaders in the corporate world?
I don't know if the seed was necessarily planted then. Like I loved it. that I was probably, at that stage too young to really know what I wanted to be doing. I loved the work that I was doing. I took that. Because of that work, I then had the opportunity to go and work in India for 6 months, setting up call centers over there. And again, like the leadership skills that I had learned through that program set me up to feel really confident in being able to handle training other leaders in another culture, which is a huge challenge, particularly for someone so young. And I think, I reflect on all of that with so much fondness, so much joy. I loved that so much. I don't know if at the time it was clear to me that's what I wanted to do later. But once I got into coaching, I reflected on that a lot, and I still do. And it's become really clear to me that a lot of what I learned and enjoyed about my time with Optus is what I now want to be doing for other leaders.
I just want to make a quick comment about working with offshore teams. And as a lot of people might know, I've got another company called Offshore Talent. We've got, several hundred staff in the Philippines. When you hear someone with a different accent on the phone, it doesn't necessarily mean they are overseas. We're a multicultural community here, but just be a bit patient. They are trying to do their best, and they're almost always absolutely gorgeous, lovely people that are just going to work and doing a tough job. So next time you get on the phone and you hear someone with an accent, it might just be around the corner from where you live. It doesn't necessarily mean, it's an outsourced call center. But even if it is, it doesn't matter, because they're just people doing their job. So
exactly. Have patience and compassion.
Yeah.
And that's so important to being able to work well with someone who just wants to solve your problems.
Just be a good human. Right, next. You went into copywriting for a while. Now, I'm super fascinated about copywriting, because sometimes my words aren't good and I have trouble articulating, and
sometimes mine aren't either.
Eloquent. But tell me a little bit about your copywriting career and what you did in that space.
Yeah. So just very quick backstory. I also worked in another organization doing corporate comms and change communications for a while. So there are a lot of skills that I learned from that. I worked for a publisher for a couple of years as well. So, coupling all of that together, when I moved here and I was looking for work like I used to do in Melbourne, and the kinds of roles that I wanted and felt like were the right fit for me just didn't exist. Where I live, it's predominantly small, medium businesses. There's only, really one large enterprise here. And so roles like mine just didn't exist.
Yep.
And I started started getting to know someone who ran a marketing agency locally. And she said I could really do with a copywriter to help me out with some projects. Who ever thought about copywriting before? And I sort of went, oh, no, I haven't really thought about it. And the seed was planted then from just doing some work with her. I really enjoyed it, realized that it was something that I could do from home while looking after young children.
Yep.
And started looking into it, found a community of copywriters, and started and grew my business from there.
Was that the first time you were self-employed or started your own business?
Not completely. I also, when I did corporate comms, I did events management as well. Yep. So I actually did a really large client project running a conference in Las Vegas and New York. Not long after I moved to Nowra from Melbourne. It's just a former colleague of mine who'd become a CEO of an organization, and I'd worked with him before on a conference in Las Vegas and New York. And he said, Vegas, New York, our industry, can you come and run a conference for us while you're, at home looking after your young one? And I went, sure, absolutely, I can do that.
No cuff too tough. All good, I got it.
Yeah. So that was my first foray into self-employment, working for clients, and I loved it. And it was after that I then went into copywriting.
Got it. So was this now the pathway to small business and running your own show, or did you morph in and out of corporate work, or now you're set on your path?
No, I did actually go back briefly I worked in a hotel for a little while. Just decided it was a stage where my husband wasn't around a bit. I wanted a little bit more stability. So I worked in a hotel for a little while, and it was interesting because that job, I loved the people. It was such a great place to work at. The role was pretty easy for me. I didn't even have emails after hours. I didn't know I
Love
had
it.
no idea what that was like. I hadn't worked in a job for years where there were no emails after hours, but there was something missing for me.
It was funny. It was funny. I was overseas last week with some mates for my birthday, and one of my mates is a worker, like has a job, and he's always had a job and never run his own business. And I was doing a few emails in the evening, and he was like, "Oh man, you shouldn't be doing that. What about the right to disconnect?" And I was just like, "Dude, I'm a business owner, mate. For me, it's a very challenging thing to enforce my own right to disconnect. Obviously, especially when I'm on holidays and the team's cracking on." But tell us about, where did this, again, I love the pathways or the ways that our life experiences lead to
Mm.
where we end up.
Mm.
Emotional fitness coach, where did that come from, and what did you do to get yourself into a space where you can really share?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because for a long time I had some real hang-ups about not being clear on my professional direction, not being able to put myself in a box. I always found it really hard. When you fly somewhere internationally and you're filling out the customs card and you have to put your
Yeah.
profession on
What
it.
do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I often struggled with that because I'm like, I can't just put doctor, lawyer, pilot,
Yeah.
teacher, something really simple. And the space is always really small. And writing things like, corporate communications specialist, I'm like, that just doesn't even fit.
Yeah.
But I had actually changed quite a lot, and I'd never really landed on what felt right. At some point in my career, I landed on the term multi-potentialite, which is someone who is really just maybe not necessarily comfortable or happy, but just steps around trying out different things, building their skills laterally rather than necessarily in a very clear direction. And I loved when I landed on that word because I resonated with it. I felt it describe me, and I felt like I could finally put myself in a box. Don't know why I wanted to do that, but I kind of did. But interestingly, being a copywriter, I think some of the best copywriters are multi-potentialites, people who have worked in a range of industries, worked in a range of jobs, tried on lots of different hats, because once you actually start working with clients, it really helps to get into the mind of someone to be able to understand who they are, why they do what they do, where they come from, if you've had a broad experience in your professional life.
Have you ever put it down on the arrivals card? Is there that many? I don't know if there's that many boxes on our little orange card to put in. Is there? It's a it's a fascinating word, and I've never heard it. I've just written it down. I'm just sort of now unpacking it and just reflecting on it a little bit. Is that? Is that a Mirandaism?
No, it's not. So there's a woman by the name of Emily Wapnick who coined that term. I don't know if she has a TED talk on it, but there's definitely some videos of her talking about it. It's her thing that I think she created the word. And it's a bit of a movement that she created to help people like her feel like it's okay to not be clear on the direction that you want to take your professional life in.
I
Mm.
love this. I love it. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, where it makes me sort of reflect on for a moment is I did a program with someone last year talking about personal brand, and what
Mm-hmm.
what is it that I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to achieve, and what is it I like. So, there's a massive part of me that is, a husband, dad, father, basketball nut, basketball kids
Mm-hmm.
coach. Then there's this other, veteran business owner,
Mm-hmm.
passionate about, doing this little stuff. But the other thing I really truly love is just travel,
Yeah.
I travel overseas a lot, and I really want to just start a travel business. But then I just want to be a gardener because I just do like gardening. So I feel, am I being wishy washy? And one of the things I was saying to the lady is like, how do I reflect who these personal brands are? And the
Mm.
different personal brands that I've got. And she's going, hang on a sec. They're not different personal brands.
Yeah.
That is
There'll be
all
a
your
thread,
personal brand.
and there'll be
That's
a
just,
thread through them all.
yeah, that's just you.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to share. And for anyone who's thinking about, like, do you have to have one LinkedIn post for the veteran guy? Do you have to have another one for the travel agent, or another one for the basketball dad? It is just a reflection of you and who you are. But if I can come back to emotional fitness,
Yes. I was
for, for the dummies, what's emotional fitness?
Emotional fitness is about our ability to handle our relationship with uncertainty.
Our relationship with uncertainty, not our relationship with others.
No, and that's a really key bit of language to kind of focus on, because we actually have a relationship with everything in our lives. Like, we typically tend to think of relationships as something that we have with people, but we actually have a relationship with uncertainty. We have a relationship with time. We have a relationship with health. We have a relationship with wealth. We have a relationship with fitness. We have a relationship with food. There's lots of different aspects of our lives that we have a relationship with. And when you start to look at the different elements of your life and you think about the relationship that you have with it, you can actually then start to unpack where some of your strengths and your challenges are as it relates to that part of your life. So I could ask you, Pete, what's your relationship with time, for example? And you might start to look at time through a different lens than if I just said to you, Pete, are you any good at time management?
Yeah, interesting. I'm definitely a scatterbrain butterfly chaser who finds it hard to prioritize. If I think of time, just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago. So time is now starting to
Congratulations.
thinking a little bit different, flip the steak over, half done. But my relationship with uncertainty, again, as the cogs turn slowly in my mind, I'm just unpacking that. Can you just share with me a little bit more about a relationship with uncertainty? Because I don't know, as I listen to you, what I feel about that statement, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. And it's very normal, because uncertainty is a really big thing. And it's also can be a really small thing. Like, it can show up in the micro moments of every day, but it can also be something that is constantly kind of hanging over our head. Like, I mean, for me, a lot of uncertainty when I talk about my professional career, how it used to be was, I'm uncertain of the direction that I actually want to take it in. Whereas now, particularly since becoming emotionally fit, I'm really okay with not knowing what direction it needs to go in. So how does that kind of relate to emotional fitness? What does that mean in the everyday? Our emotional fitness is made up of 5 different pillars. It's about our identity, so who we really are, rather than the labels that we carry. So our character traits, rather than things like the things that we
Job
define
title.
externally. Yeah, job title. I'm a mom. I'm a dad. I'm a friend. It's the things that we hold inside of us that we can control and can never be taken away from us. It's about our life stages. So kind of, without getting too deep into it, because that's way too much for a short conversation, but it's kind of where we are in a sort of psychological development perspective. It's about our values. It's about our emotional flexibility. So our emotional range, the different types of emotions that we allow ourselves to experience, and the meaning that we make of things. And it's about our perspective. So once we start to work on all of those things, we get to a place where we can work, where we're feeling emotionally fit and we're better able to handle uncertainty. It doesn't mean we don't still experience it. Doesn't mean that we don't still have moments where it can be really hard for us, but we now have the tools to be able to deal with it.
I'm going to just stick on a little tangent here, because as I talked about personal brand before, a lot of those things were titles or labels, dad, coach, business, whatever. How do you see your emotional fitness fitting in with your brand, or how you express yourself in the real world? Is it a part of the fabric of how we present, or is it part of the pillars or the foundations of what makes us strong, or not?
Our emotional fitness.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I think it's about the strength that we have within ourselves. So I think a great way to illustrate it would be for me to share, before I became an emotional fitness coach, I would say that my relationship with uncertainty was shaky. My husband came home and said to me, I don't know, it might have been 2 or 3 years ago, there was a posting in the States that he was interested in. And it was somewhere in Nevada, I think.
Yeah.
somewhere I hadn't heard of before.
It's a
And
long way from Nowra.
it's a very long way from anywhere.
Yeah.
um, and I was just like, I can't handle this. I can't imagine the thought of it. I don't know how I would go with that. What would I do? Who would I be over there? How would I survive? And I was really uncomfortable with the idea of it. And then my journey to emotional fitness took about 12 months. And
Yep.
then a really great test of how is my relationship with uncertainty now was he then came home and talked about another overseas posting. And I was like, yes, absolutely, bring it. Can we do this? And there was another one that he was talking about up in Cairns and another one somewhere else. And he was like, oh, I'm not sure. I'm like, come on, let's do it. I want to road test this
Yeah.
emotional fitness. I want to see how I'm going with uncertainty because I feel really excited about it. Let's go do it. Completely different person and different response to 12 months prior.
Okay, and I'm going to be stretching myself here because I am no psychologist or philosopher, but it's like that Nietzsche kind of statement. And again, I probably didn't even pronounce that right, where the only control that we really have is the space between our action and reaction, and how we actually, how we feel about these things in this time of uncertainty, what choices we make.
Yeah, I love that. So I often talk about that, that gap between stimulus and response. So the trigger, the event, the thing that happens, and there's things that are happening all day, every day. It can be something that you said, it can be something I heard, it can be something I saw. And life happens in that gap. And we are the controllers of that gap. The problem is that most people don't realize, A, that they have control over that gap, or B, that there even is a gap that they can control. But once we bring awareness to that gap and we start to think about how we want to use it and come from a place of responding rather than reacting, the whole game changes.
How applicable, you're doing this stuff with executives and grown-ups. How applicable is this? And I'm using this for personal advantage here. Is this concept for children?
It's huge, actually. And so I have a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old. And
I'm getting some dad tips here, some cheap dad tips.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, kids, in a lot of ways, kids can be really great with uncertainty. Neurodivergent kids, not so much. And our 12-year-old is neurodivergent and he struggles a lot with uncertainty. So I've got, I'm in an interesting place where I have the opportunity to road test these skills with a child, with someone who I love enormously. And it's really hard. So I think that, it's definitely skills that we can teach to children, but we have to temper it in a way where it makes sense for them. So I taught one of the big things that I do with my kids that is really foundational to helping them build a strong internal character is helping them recognize what's good in them, what skills they have, what they're good at. So a really good example is 2 words that you hear most parents saying to their kids all the time, which are not bad, not at all. They're great, but we can do better. Good job. We say good job a lot as parents. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's better than saying nothing. But good job praises the outcome. Good job doesn't tell them what they've done really well. So they're kind of the 2 challenges with it. Praises the outcome, doesn't tell them what they've done well. If instead I something like, I can see how much effort you put into that, or I love your commitment to consistency, I love your commitment to completion, then what I'm doing is praising and recognizing the thing that they did rather than the outcome, and I'm helping them build their character, helping them build their identity.
You're really feeding and empowering the action, not just the end state. And if you can combine the both of them, better than go stand in the corner or discipline you, if you're trying to get the best out of your kids. You'd also do a lot of work with other tools such as EDISC and that. Can you share what EDISC is and how applicable it is in both small business as well as our own lives?
Yeah, so I love EDISC because it's a really simple tool that anyone can use to help build their self-awareness, build their awareness of others, and have stronger, more compassionate relationships with others. So I use it for both personal coaching and leadership coaching and with teams. It really comes to life with teams, but it's a powerful tool for anyone to have done on themselves, because what it helps us understand is what our natural energetic wiring is. So not energetic in the woo sense, but just what are the behaviors that I naturally lean into because they take less energy for me? What are the ones that I avoid because they actually take a lot more energy from me? And how does that influence how I show up in the world? So it helps us understand things like how we prefer to make decisions, how we respond to change, how we respond to pressure, whether we're someone who's more into the big picture versus detail, whether we're more focused on the possibilities in the future and what we haven't thought of yet, or whether we're more focused on the past and the way things have been done before. So it really helps us understand some of our behavioral preferences as it relates to how we show up, how we relate to other people.
Now, if you haven't heard of DISC before, and I know a lot of people listening will have, it's the 4 behavioral styles of dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And I know in the DISC profiles that I've done in the past, particularly not long after I got out of the military, a high DI kind of impulsive decision maker. What's the difference between DISC and EDISC?
Yeah, great question, Pete, and one that I love answering, because a lot of people have heard of DISC. More people have heard of DISC than EDISC. And so it's really helpful to make the distinction. So DISC is the theory or the method or the methodology that EDISC is also actually built on. The E stands for extended. It's essentially an extension of DISC. So DISC as a tool is something that, in theory, you or I could build a DISC tool if we wanted to. We could build our own and we could take it into organizations and we could say to people, you're a D or you're an I or you're an S or whatever it might be. And you can understand that if we did that, the rigor behind the tool might be missing, which means the accuracy can be missing. Now, that's not to say that DISC is on the whole inaccurate. There are great DISC tools and not so great DISC tools out there, just like any tools. There's great ones and the not so great ones. Then extended DISC is actually built on that. So it uses the same theory and methodology, but there's one EDISC platform across the entire world. So anyone that actually gets their EDISC profile done, it's all filled into this one database with an extremely robust algorithm that delivers 88% accuracy in terms of profile results, whereas DISC delivers around about the 66% mark.
And this is important if you're using DISC as a recruitment tool or putting the right person in the right spot for promotion, other things. Where do you see EDISC being used in the workforce?
Yeah, it can be used in a range of different ways, from recruitment all the way through to development. So it can actually be used as a recruitment tool to understand right fit for role, right fit for team, right fit for the person that you're working for. And it can even be used if I just had a client last week that I worked with who could not decide between 2 candidates. And they had a sense that energetically they were really different. So I profiled both of them to help them give them insights about fit for role and complementary fit for the manager that they'd be working under. It just gives such incredible insights that you can't really get without the insights that you get from a tool like EDISC. It can also be used for team dynamics. It's really great because it's so simple to understand that, you've got 4 different styles, and yes, there's lots of attributes and there's a lot to learn about it. But from a very high level, simplistic perspective, you've only got 4 styles for people to learn. So it's great to use in teams so that people can understand each other better. They can come from a place of curiosity and compassion rather than conflict, which can often happen in the workplace where people see the world completely differently.
In the world of ChatGPT resumes and only putting your best referees on a job application, I'm not going to put anyone on there that's going to say anything bad about me. But how do you see DISC as being a pivotal tool in actually seeing through some of the veneer of a candidate?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's accurate, data-driven insights. So, I could, in theory, do a profile unpack with someone and they could disagree with what's in the report, but we know that it's 88% accurate. We
Yeah.
know that. So even if they disagreed with some of the statements, that it would be extremely unlikely, if not impossible, for someone to look at the profile and go, that's just not me. That's just not. And the other cool thing about EDISC, the DISC doesn't have, is there's actually some markers that tell us if someone has answered inconsistently or tried to game the system, in theory.
Yep.
So we can actually really see that.
And 90% accuracy is, it's a bit of a dumb statement, but when you're employing someone, 80, 100, 200, 300 grand a year, having a 90% strike rate of getting it right versus a 1 in 3 chance of getting it wrong can be a significant difference if you have to untangle putting the wrong person in the wrong job.
Yeah, it can be
I'm
really
interested.
costly.
Yeah, you mentioned before about the fit between the role versus the fit to the team and the fit to individual. How does that work when you're putting org charts together? Does one wag the other, or are you really sort of putting square pegs into square holes?
So you can absolutely use it to help you put together an org chart and then put names against an org chart, because you can look at roles and map them against EDISC. You can look at it and go, this role is really an SC type role. This role is really an ID type role. And you can then use that to drive your recruitment. You can then have a look at teams as well. And it's always comes down to what's the purpose of the team. So if you understand what the purpose of the team is, it might make sense to have a whole team of like energies, but it might make sense to actually have a good spread of different energies across the team. And it really comes down to understanding what is the team's objective, so that we can make sure that the roles on that org chart as it relates to EDISC help to the team to actually meet their objective.
And I know, again, for the butterfly chasing scatterbrain that I am, if I was to get put in the wrong role, where I had to I have trouble. This might sound funny. Like reading long documents. Like I love to read a book,
Of
but if
course,
I
as
had
a
to
DI
read a long,
you would hate
yeah.
that. You want the executive summary.
So like I had someone send me, we're building an app at the moment for the veteran business community, just for engagement and opportunities. And the developers wrote like a 12-page line by line description of all the functionality. And by page 1.5, I'm just like, I literally
Yeah.
cannot apply myself to look at the words. And if I
that's
was to go into a job like that, that'd be terrible. I'd do a bad job.
You would, because it'd be energetically draining for you. Because
Yeah.
even if you want to do that, even if it's interesting for you to read it, even if there's a great reason for you to be completing that entire 12-page document, energetically, it's going to demand a lot of you. So if you went into a role where you had to do that all the time, you would be completely and utterly burnt out. And this is one of the other cool things about EDISC as well. Produces 2 graphs. One is how you are naturally energetically wired. One is how you're showing up right now. And there's so much information in the gap between those two. And what we can then have a look at is, what is it that's actually driving you to show up differently right now? Is it sustainable? Is it because the demands of your environment require it right now? Or is it because you're potentially in a role that demands you to be operating outside of your energetic comfort zone on a daily basis? And then there's another part of the report that I can have a look at that can actually show me whether you're potentially on the path to burnout.
Yeah, this is fascinating because, again, chicken egg, horse cart, wagging the dog, doing this kind of disc profiling doesn't necessarily. So, EDISC, you can do it in a couple of ways. You can put a person through the system and come out with whatever they identify as, but you can also reverse engineer it to put a position through. Is that right?
When you say to put a position through, to say this position should be for this type of behavioral
Correct.
style, and then let's go recruit someone that fits it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, correct. So like if I have a very data-driven job and I'm going to be like reading long documents and attention to detail, you can feed that. I don't know how that technique works, but that job description or the structure, and it'd be like, right, well, this is suited for an SC kind of person, or I don't even know if that's right. But just another question on the four categories.
Mhm.
Do we find leadership comes more from some or the others, or leadership can come from any category? Because there is no strengths or weaknesses of these categories. It's just perspective. Is that right?
Yeah. Great question. Yes, it's about perspective, but it's also about flexibility. So one of the great things about EDISC is that it doesn't put you into a box. So I was chuckling before when I said that I just wanted to be put into a box,
Yeah.
because now I'm all about, well, we actually don't want to put people into boxes. Like, even though you're a DI energy, we don't want to put you in the box of you're a DI, so that means you'll operate this way and you'll only ever operate that way, and we can't expect anything different of you. The best people, the best leaders, but the best people as well, are those that are behaviorally flexible. So there is no one right leadership style, because it also depends a little bit on the environment that you're working in. It also depends on the people that you've got around you. But it's really about that behavioral flexibility, where when the demands of your day, your role, your objectives require you to be able to tap into the energy styles that don't come as naturally to you, that you can do that, that you don't avoid it, but also that you have the awareness to know this is not my energetic comfort zone. It's not my natural playground. So I'm going to deploy strategy X in order to make sure that when I'm tapping into what doesn't come naturally to me, I'm doing it either when it makes sense or how it makes sense. But equally, you think about the people you've got around you that actually bring complementary skills, or sorry, complementary behavioral styles that don't come quite so naturally to you.
It's just made me think about the power of doing this for yourself, just so you can understand yourself a little bit better, and being able to reflect or resonate on what your known profile is to sort of teach you. And you mentioned, I think a really important thing you mentioned there was awareness,
Yeah.
understanding, and even recognizing or acknowledging, hey, going through this kind of role is not your sweet spot. So, but and you also mentioned, what are the tools I need to put into play for this specific period of time to go in and out. But how powerful is that also if you understand this of your team, and you're
Yeah.
asking your team to do things either on a temporary or an enduring basis, just to have some of these, again, tools or cards or tricks in your back pocket to get the best out of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so, so important, because you absolutely nailed it when you said it's about awareness, because it's about awareness of ourselves. And as a leader, it's absolutely about awareness of the people that you're expecting performance out of every day. And if we don't fully understand the people who we work with, then they will feel misunderstood. How could they
Yeah.
feel any other way? If we don't understand them, they are misunderstood. So they'll feel misunderstood. And when people feel misunderstood, they just don't bring their best.
Do
They
you feel doing these reports on yourself is validating, confronting, or one of those two, validating, confronting, or somewhere in between?
yeah.
What are you, out of curiosity? Is that something to share?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I am an IS energy.
Yep.
So IS energies, they're very people focused, very relationship focused, very connection focused, very kind of kinesthetic.
Yeah.
We're really very much into people. I energies are big picture, S's are detail. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. I kind of find that I oscillate between the two,
Mm.
that I can sometimes go straight to big picture. Other times I can go straight to detail, but I'm able to actually see both, which is really great. I
I'm going to
also,
ask you. Sorry, after you.
yeah, I was just going to say that you were sort of touching on before about how it's useful for awareness. It's useful for bringing awareness to the things that we do that serve us, but also for the things that get in the way of us. And probably one of the biggest things that I've taken away from it. So I energies typically make decisions fast, but with connection-based criteria. So we're thinking about who do I get to hang out with? Who will I get to know? Who's going to be around as part of whatever it is that's this decision that I need to make. But we tend to overlook details. So fast decision based on who, can overlook details. So then what can happen is there's a mess after the decision has been made, and we can then go into being a little bit disorganized. So for me, bringing awareness to that has been really powerful because it's shifted my decision-making strategy and it's kept me out of hot water a few times, which is really useful to have.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask one more question before we wrap, but I'd like you to just sort of share with us how the combination of understanding EDISC and the profiling of you and your team and your roles, plus emotional fitness, helps us become better leaders in the workplace.
Yeah, well, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but a lot of it actually just does come back to awareness. It's super important. We can't improve on what we're not aware of. We simply can't. And awareness, it needs to be an evolving project that we're constantly working on. There's a self-awareness expert who's developed a really cool system for assessing and testing people's self-awareness.
Yep.
And I think something like 80% of the world's population think they're self-aware. But according to her criteria, only about 15% actually meet the criteria for being self-aware. So it actually says there's a massive gap between the self-awareness we think we have and the self-awareness that we actually have. And I always say, like, once we have better awareness, we can make better choices. Once we have better choices, we can experience better lives. And so everything really starts with awareness. And if we can bring tools in that can help us build our awareness, we can start to make those better choices, which can mean that we're leading better teams, leading better lives.
Look, I think this is so powerful. And if you're out there listening and you want to know more about DISC and EDISC, and particularly if you want to look in the mirror and reflect on, a little bit about your profiling and where your energy sits, I really encourage you to reach out to Miranda, and we'll have all the details, in the show notes. But just quickly shout out for your website, Miranda.
Yeah, you can find me on mirandapacker.com.au.
mirandapacker.com.au. And we'll throw all the LinkedIn and all those other notes down there. Thank you for, I don't mean to sound too cliche or cheesy, but thanks for what you do, being a partner and spouse of, serving member, and just want to acknowledge your service within this space as well. I'm really going to sit down and reflect a little bit today on, my emotional fitness, where I sit, and just started thinking about how, I can, not only empower my day, but empower your team. So really cool, fun chat. And thank you for sharing with me.
Yeah, you're welcome, Pete. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a really fun chat. If you couldn't tell, I can talk about EDISC all day. So.
Well, let's come back and have another chat about it sometime. But as for today, thank you very much, Miranda. My name's Pete Liston, and hope you enjoyed that. We'll make sure you get in touch with Miranda if you've got any questions. All the details will be below. My name's Pete Liston. This is the Military Mindset for Business podcast. Out.